Thank you for being with us. Do you support this bipartisan discharge to release all of the Epstein files?
Look, I support full transparency on the Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein was a disgusting human being who has a special place in hell, and I think we should have full transparency on everything that happened.
Okay, so you want it to come out, but you heard sort of some mixed messaging that we're getting from the White House. The president has said if something is credible, it should be released. It's unclear if he is aware of what has not been released. What do you make of that?
Well, I trust President Trump's judgment completely on this. I think he's been the most transparent president we've ever had. You talked about the health conditions. We had to have Joe Biden's doctor take the Fifth Amendment last week over their lack of transparency. And so President Trump has proven to be transparent on everything. If there is anything to show, then I'm sure that they will.
And if there is anything to show, but without putting out some of the information that there is, and DOJ has been certainly giving a rationale about why they're not doing that and concerns for victims. You've heard from so many people, supporters of President Trump's, I'm assuming some supporters of yours as well, who say that's not sufficient for us. What do you say to them?
Well, look, people believe justifiably that Epstein did terrible things, and they want to hold those people accountable who were part of it. I fully support that, and I want everything to be released that's real, and I trust Donald Trump's judgment to do that. You can't release stuff that doesn't exist, and I know that the president's going to do the right thing just like he's done on everything else since he became president.
And you did mention the president's health, so I want to ask you, do you have concerns about it?
No, I think the president is a man in his 70s. He's going to have the kinds of conditions that people of that age too. But what I appreciate is the fact that, again, they are being transparent about them. I mean, Joe Biden tried to tell us for years there was nothing wrong with his brain when it was obvious there was something, to the point that his doctor had to take the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination of a crime last week. He's basically admitting they committed crimes in covering up Joe Biden's health condition. So I think we should all celebrate the fact that Donald Trump is willing to tell us what's going on. This is not a health condition that should be cause for alarm, but it's the sort of thing that we need to know so they can manage it.
I do just want to note that this disclosure came after his ankles were visibly swollen, and we could see makeup on his hand covering up a bruise, which they say is because of an aspirin regimen and a lot of handshaking. I want to ask you about this DOJ cuts package, the package codifying it, passing the Senate, needs to pass in the House tomorrow. Are enough Republicans on board?
I believe so. I mean, I can't speak for my colleagues. I know I'm on board. Look, I think there's some frustration that the Senate didn't just pass what we sent them, but we want to cut. So even if it's not as much as we sent over there, any cuts are better than no cuts. And the fact of the matter is, this is the low-hanging fruit. In a modern world with internet and streaming, we don't need to be funding PBS and NPR, let alone with debt financing. And we shouldn't be sending money all over the world to do silly things that don't benefit the American people. We could have a debate if we were funding this without deficit spending, but we're spending trillions of dollars a year we don't have, and this is absolutely low-hanging fruit that needs to be cut.
Some of your fellow Republicans feel that it does benefit Americans and their constituents specifically. They aren't pleased about the cuts to public broadcasting because they say rural communities are going to be especially hard hit, that they're going to see this at the station level. Republican Mark Amodei voted against it in the House the first time. He said he's taking a closer look at the stations in the Senate version. Let's listen to what he said.
When you focus on the stations instead of the folks back east and the editorial stuff, it's an entirely different story to be told, and I don't think that was evaluated. When you look, at least in our neck of the woods, John, and overlay it from the 2024 election results, those public broadcasting stations in the West, overlay them with who voted for President Trump, and it's like, guess what? These were the president's people in a voter sense. They have done nothing to be punished for their editorial views, since they don't have editorial views like the main corporation does.
What do you say to that, sir?
Look, part of my district is rural, and my constituents, even in that part of my district, are demanding that we cut the federal budget. And frankly, I don't think we should be spending my constituents' tax dollars.
I hear you, but that's not what he's... I hear you, sir. And if that's what people are telling you, but that's your colleague, your Republican colleague, who is telling you something very different. He's telling us something very different about what he's hearing and what he's hearing from his constituents. What do you say to that?
I think he's allowed to have his opinion. I don't agree with the idea of deficit spending to create government TV stations and government radio stations. I don't believe they're necessary at all. I do believe they were necessary 40 or 50 or 60 years ago. But as we bring broadband and all kinds of technologies to rural areas, I simply cannot justify borrowing money from my kids and grandkids to keep these stations in existence. I don't think it makes sense, and I just respectfully disagree with him.
I want to ask you about another funding issue. You are a member of the House Education and Workforce Committee, and CNN has reporting on this abrupt Department of Education suspension of 21st Century Community Learning Centers funding. It's a federal program that supports more than 10,000 summer and after-school programs. Some of this money, a lot of it already approved by Congress for summer programs that are currently in effect, so it's really leaving them in the lurch. Is this affecting people in your district?
Well, I appreciate the question. I can't answer it because this is actually the first I've heard of it. So if it's affecting people in my district, they haven't reached out to me. What I will say is this: as I've dug into the Department of Education, a huge percentage of the money the Department of Education spends does not benefit students. It is spent on overhead and other things. I'm not saying that's what this program does, but I think we should all agree whatever money the federal government is spending on education should actually help benefit kids, whether it's after school, during the summer, or during the school year, and too much of that money is not doing that.
Yeah, as we understand it, some of these programs operate in your school district. Curious if they operate in the summer, but maybe we can check back in with you on that, Congressman.
Yeah, I represent 6 school districts. None have reached out to me about this issue thus far, but I am happy to look into it because, look, I believe education is a miracle. That's what helps a kid who comes from limited means live the American dream, and it's what I worked on in the Florida legislature, and I'm proud to be on that committee right now. I just don't know the details of the situation that you're asking about. First I've heard of it.
All right, Congressman Randy Fine, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.